We're live. Hey, welcome to the show. I'm glad you could join me this morning. I've been away for a while. The reason why I've been away for a while is because I got some great news. I became a grandfather this past week. Actually, a week ago today, little Alina Josephine was born. My son Tony is a proud papa, and he and Amanda and Alina are all doing great. They're doing fine, figuring out this parenthood thing. COVID's kept my wife and I away, but we sit by the phone, by the FaceTime, waiting to look at that little ball of joy. Man, she makes us so happy. It's amazing how you can fall in love with somebody who you never met in an instant. Of course, you've experienced that as a parent, and for you out there who are parents know exactly what I mean. And there are some grandparents listening in. And you know what? I kind of had some experience with that with my being a great uncle, but never experienced the joy and love of seeing that little miracle there. Man, God does some great work. So this show is dedicated to the fact that I'm a grandfather, and I don't even know where it's going to lead me. But I had a couple things I wanted to talk to you about today, and things that have been on my mind, thinking about, not weighing on my mind certainly, but things I've been thinking about. And first of all, here's this little um, ball of clay, if you will, as a human. And sometimes I just sit back and think, am I going to be here for her for the big events in her life? Because man, I sure would like to experience those. It's the third time through. You get to experience them personally. Growing up, and then you get a real hand in your child's development, and now here I am, more of an outsider looking in, but from a grandparent looking at those events. Man, would it be awesome to be here at their high school, and then hopefully college graduation if that's what she chooses, and maybe some sporting events if she chooses to go that route, her graduations, and hey, and even down the line, a long way down the line, maybe even be there watching your son give her away someday. But that would be cool. That'd be awesome. And it's fun to think about. It really is. Um, who knows what God's going to allow me to be here for? But you know what? It's a miracle, man. Because be 9 years ago that I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, 31% survival rate for 2 years. And for 2 years, man, that's that. And here I am 9 years later, and it's a miracle, man, that I'm here, and that I got to experience something that was on my bucket list. And it's almost like my bucket list is done now. So congratulations to Amanda and Tony and that beautiful ball of joy. Alina Josephine, the prettiest thing I've ever seen. My wife and I are so happy, so happy. Proud grandparents. Okay, so let's get on with the show today. Back when I was a kid, uh, it was uh, it was kind of amazing to listen and to marvel, I guess, at some of the local coaches who were legendary, if you will. And I know that some of the names that it doesn't matter where you're from. The names are different, but not the sentiment, or not the examples for sure. But there was this guy at Beaver River. His name was Bob Giordano, and Bob is legendary, and he was a great coach. Won lots of games. There weren't state tournaments and things back then. I'm not even sure how many sectional titles he won, but if you went to Beaver River High School, you could see him on the wall. But it's funny how Bob had this great success, and everybody from outside looking in was always like, there has to be a reason why these guys are so good, and not like most other programs who are up and down. They were consistently good, and he didn't have a whole lot of guys on his team, a whole lot of guys to choose from. But he was always being accused of running a year-round program, or a summer program that maybe fit the mold to what the state was asking you to stay under the guidelines of. But it was all about really what the parents and ultimately the kids were willing to do to be Bob part of Bob's program. Now I'm talking as if I know this guy, and I don't. I may have met him along the way, but boy, he was like legendary for his intensity, for his winning and his willingness to sacrifice to be there. Some of the other names from that era were Lou Kibling, certainly at Watertown High School, and really good friends of the Kibling offsprings, especially Sue Gallagher, married a good friend of mine, Steve Gallagher, and his daughter's a friend of mine. I taught with her at Carthage, and her son Dave was a national championship winner at championship at Cortland, played for me. That was his grandson. And Sarah, who was an All American, ended up going to St. Mary's, played some lacrosse at St. Mary's. But anyway, that's part of that extension of the Lou Kibling family. Lou Kibling was at mighty Watertown. Now, Watertown was at the disadvantage back then, a big school. But having to play in the Central Cities League, and it's nothing like it was now. I mean, Syracuse is still, a strong, strong schools, but not like back in the day. I mean, schools were much bigger then, and Watertown was always up against it, always the underdog. And Lou Kibling was the basketball coach there, and he had some great teams. He's just kind of legendary up here for his coaching, and so they're just sitting back, just as somebody who wanted to be a coach, just sitting back and just marveling at the success of him. And anyway, so it was Giordano and it was Kibling from here. And Tony Lippart was a coach, basketball coach at South Jefferson, and he had this aura about him, and he had some great teams, and so our young coach Jerry Metcalf was battling against those guys when he first started, and Jerry had some great success here at Carthage, and so, and he was, legendary for his 2-3 zone. He was like a master of this. And then certainly Terry Kaufman was our football coach at Carthage. And, you don't get a plaque on the side of a football field, unless you've done something special in the community. And Terry had some great teams, some great athletes. I've spoken to Terry before, and he ended up being a good friend of mine, and he's responsible for a lot of successes that I've had. He recommended me to be the lacrosse coach at Carthage, but the guys you marveled at and guys you wanted to be a part of. Now, moving on more to maybe the central cities area, and I'm sorry if I come from the football, baseball, basketball perspective of things here. Well, before I move on, Tom LeDuc's name comes up over and over again. Tom started lacrosse at South Jefferson. He coached at IHC, the Catholic school in Watertown, for years too. And Tom's legendary for the amount of time and effort that he put in. He was a multi-sport coach. I mean, Tom was on the sidelines for lacrosse certainly, but really football. He coached football back in the heyday of IHC, and tremendous IHC, Watertown, Carthage, the big schools in this area back in the day had these tremendous rivalries. Not so much on the lacrosse field, but as it turned out, these guys were just names blast from the past of legendary coaches, and guys who I always looked up to as a kid. Just sitting back listening to my parents talk about that. But what I wanted to talk about today was other than just to throw some names out there of local guys who were kind of legendary coaches. Now, look, there's some legendary coaches like Neil Albo, a wrestling coach at Lowville Academy, Hall of Famer. I wasn't a wrestler, so I really, other than hearing about them just their string of being able to win, legendary, and any coach can only hope to be mentioned once in their career as being legendary. But those are places that really inspired me to try to have a long, prosperous career, and more important to me than long was prosperous, and trying to win as many games as you can. Well, let me talk about some people from outside the area with these kind of reputations. I mean, there's nobody more legendary in the lacrosse world and from any level than my good friend Mike Massera at West Genesee High School. And when I started coaching 35 years ago, Mike was already legendary, and then he and I retired together after 30 years, and Mike ended up being the all-time winning coach in the USA in the USA lacrosse wise. And he won 16, 17 state championships. And just to be mentioned once in a sentence with Mike Massera would be an honor. And believe me, I didn't stack up anywhere near Mike, but his commitment and his year-round work ethic and obsession, if you will, with lacrosse is legendary. And okay, so all of that to set that up. Okay, to set that up, um, being obsessive. And I'll tell you right now, if I was a college coach out there or a recruiter looking for somebody because of the situation that we're in right now, I would be looking for these kids who are obsessive. And some people look at being obsessive as being a negative thing. Well, I guess being obsessed with the wrong thing, it certainly is the wrong thing, to be, but being obsessed with something that's wholesome and good and something that's not going to hurt your body or you're making sacrifices that would necessarily harm somebody else, that's a bad thing. But I'm not talking about that. I'm being obsessed. Somebody who's obsessed with success, or somebody's obsessed with something positive, that's a good thing. And I think that's something that crosses you over. I know from my own situation, back when we were in the midst of winning 5, 6 league championships in a row and not losing any games. People from the outside are always looking for ways to grab onto a string and pull that balloon down, if you will. And it had to be because we were cheating, because we were doing something we shouldn't do. But, it had to do basically with not only my obsessiveness with us being good, and our program was 365, and but also the kids being obsessed with it, and more importantly, the parents being obsessed with it, to allow these kids to come and be part of the program that we offered. Now, we offered intramurals and open gyms and summer programs and tournaments, and then sacrifices during the season, and all of that added up. Now, that made us equal with anybody else who had a coach and parents and kids who were obsessive. But on top of that, if the kids were obsessive about the time they spent on their own, that really is the difference maker. And that's one of the points of today's show, if there is a point of today's show, because I'm babbling. But remember, I'm a grandfather now, so I got an excuse. I'm an old guy. If you didn't think I was old before, I'm old now, just so you know. But well, anyway, back to being a recruiter. I see these videos in my mind. I haven't seen them literally, but just think how much progress that a player, a high school junior or senior, and even sophomore, could have made physically over the past 2.5, 3 months during the 19 shutdown here. I mean, if they're being obsessive about their body type and changing who they were as an athlete, they could do that in their own basement, for crying out loud. In my studio on the other side of the wall that I'm facing right now is a full set of Olympic weights and squat rack and chin up bar, the whole 9 yards. And you know what? If you had that in your basement, and of course somebody would use that as an excuse if they don't have it in their basement, but there's a reason why they wouldn't have it in their basement. They're not going to use it, other than hang clothes on it. But I can just imagine what a young growing strong body could do in 2.5 months, 3 months, with working out every day for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And, and I'm sure there's people out there flipping tires, finding places to attack the tires, that new tractor tire thing. Maybe it's not new, but, seems, relatively new to me. But, just, I just don't, I don't understand, or I don't get how somebody can possibly think that they're going to get where they dream to be without an obsessiveness as an athlete. How about getting in there and having busted your tail for the last 2.5 months? Make a video of that and send it to a college coach. I don't care what sport you're playing. Send a video you flipping tires. Would have to be impressive to me as a college recruiter, as a coach, to see what you were willing to do in the off season. I mean, if you were like me, I got no reason to work out other than to stay alive for my grandchild as long as I can, and to have busted my tail. But there's no reason for you not to have busted your tail. Now, if you're a parent, and most of us are, of an aspiring athlete, I got asked the question not too long ago. What should my son be doing to be recruited? He'd like to play something at the highest level, and we just don't know how to do it. And my first question is, well, what have they been doing the past couple of months? Because to be honest, if they haven't been obsessed with obtaining that goal, then I tell you what, unless they were one of the few who are blessed with this natural ability, and I have seen many of those in my lifetime, to be honest with you, why don't you just let the chips fall where they may and let this kid go and play at the level that maybe they've gravitated to. But don't look for magic beans to put them at a Division I level. There is no magic bean to play or to be successful at any level. It has to do with some sort of obsessiveness, that's for sure. Just some names from the past here, locally. Unless you have a child who is a multi-sport athlete and really sought after by multiple sport, you don't have anybody who is there because of any other reason than they work themselves there and have some special talent. I mean, so to some extent, these superstars are born, and believe me, I've seen a lot here at Carthage High School over the years. I've seen a great number of athletes come through and heard some stories, about some guys who have legendary status, and very few of them have ever been recruited on a 2 or 3 sport level. There have been a few who probably would have made it in lots of sports, but to the most extent, they made it from obsessiveness. Now, speaking of obsessiveness, I mean, one of Carthage's top favorite sons, if you will, Dave Tremblay, who was a Major League Baseball manager for the Baltimore Orioles, went all the way from Augustinian Academy, where he was playing baseball, transferred to Carthage High School, which was a step up, so he could play at a different level, ends up at Brockport and one of the SUNY schools here in New York, and then ends up playing some semi-pro baseball with like the Watertown Royals and eventually Carthage Athletics. So here's a guy who wasn't even ever involved in major league in the steps becoming a pro ball player. And he was so obsessed with coaching and developing that skill that he just was a journeyman and worked at every level and then coached internationally. And eventually his obsession, if you will, and once again, if you see obsession as being negative, then, well, okay, fine, that's on you. But if you see obsession as being positive, like me, then you could see where somebody like Dave Tremblay could use his obsessiveness and end up at the highest level. And he did. He coached in the major leagues with Baltimore. And, so that's an example of obsessiveness. Well, some of the athletes that I marveled at, from the time that I was a kid, there was Tony Dumas locally, who was signed on the hood of a car in the parking lot at Carthage High School with the Boston Red Sox. Was in the Boston Red Sox system. I think you'd think, well, was Tony born to pitch? Is that I don't know. I do know that his brother is a Hall of Fame fast pitch softball pitcher who ended up going to he's the coach now at Brockport, another Brockport guy, legendary underhand fast pitch softball pitcher. But so he's playing pro softball. His brother's playing pro baseball. So maybe, just maybe, they were born with that body type. But a couple of the few, but moving along in that secession era, I've heard Mike Milich, a friend of mine, a really good friend of my brother's, and his brother Sam is one of my best buddies. But Mike Milich was a superstar in three sports in high school, and just a big, strong, burly man. And he ended up at Cortland, played baseball and football, and ends up electing just to play football. But he had a chance to play at Penn State, and Mike was busy playing three sports, So when you're back in the day, and even now, you play three sports, and if you have, what it takes, and apparently Mike did, you can. Mike wasn't lifting weights and things like that. It was just, he had this natural strength. And man, I've been elbowed by him and pick up basketball before, man. And I tell you what, I'd never been hit so hard on the football field as I did with an elbow of Mike Milich. But Mike might have been born with this superstardom, if you will, that didn't involve obsession. Even though Mike was obsessed with athletics, like we were in our town, and three-sport athlete, and went on to being a star at Cortland. But Mike could have played at Penn State, and he elected to stay more locally. So I've heard this story that from his coach, Chan Redfield, back in the day. Chan was a good friend of mine. I taught with Chan, and Chan tells me the story about Mike, having a conversation. Hey, you can go to Penn State, Mike, go to Penn State and work hard and maybe get on the field. Later in your career, you can go to Cortland, play both baseball and football, and be a star right away. And Mike made that choice. Mike's brother Sam went to Cortland, and Sam was never really touched a weight until college. But Sam was the starting quarterback at Cortland and a star first baseman, set some records as a freshman. And, he just had something that all of us don't have, and these guys were bigger guys, stronger guys, great hand-eye coordination, great eyesight. But, Sam was obsessed with athletics like we were obsessed with athletics. But, back in the day, three-sport athletes, he was able to use this overall ability. But anyway, so Sam was a superstar, ended up playing just baseball at Cortland. Great baseball player, started from freshman year on, and anyway, had a great career. Somebody else at Carthage who was unbelievable, Bobby Ralph. I'll tell you what kind of athlete Bob Ralph was, as a seventh grader, eighth grader, watching Bob play high school. And then even as a freshman, Bob's senior year, Bob was a high jump champion of Frontier League, jumped 6'4", won the Frontier League high jump championship, averaged over 20 a game in basketball back in the day without the 3-point arc. And he was just unbelievable. And he was a football quarterback. He run the option, ended up at Colgate. I'll tell you what that kind of athlete he was. He was, small college All-American football player at Colgate, and had jumped from baseball to track in high school, the urging of Coach Harry Kaufman, and then jumped back to baseball. At least the legend is, and ends up being the starting shortstop on the baseball team at Colgate back in the day when they had a team. Now that's an athlete right there, obsessed with athletics, obsessive obsessed with competition, and so that's one way, you have this natural ability, the body type, the speed, the hand-eye coordination, God's gifts. And then, your obsession with athletics and competition catapults you. But you know what? Most of us aren't in those categories. Those aren't us. You have to use your obsessiveness and channel it into preparation in order to make a difference. And you know what? And that's what guys like Jason Kaufman and Casey Powell and Ryan Powell and Jared Little and Tony Ventiquattro and Matt Zando and Ian Dingman and Chris Dingman, Lee Dingman, and and on and on. Gil Pearsall, Josh Ashcraft. These are Division One athletes. Tony Ventiquattro, Mario Ventiquattro. They took the obsessiveness of myself as the coach, of their parents to believe in what we were doing, and of their own to put the time in lacrosse to become so much better than everybody else skill wise because of time on task. They use this obsessiveness, oh, bad word, be obsessed with something to get themselves where they wanted to go. Now, I've always told these guys, hey, lacrosse is not a means to the end. It's a means to where you want to go. If that makes sense. Probably doesn't. But anyway, basically, I told them is, hey, use lacrosse to get where you want to go. And these guys ended up with some great college opportunities. Now, I left off lots of superstar names. So don't get mad at me because we had over 40 guys play Division One lacrosse. But obsessiveness was where they got where they wanted to go. So wrapping this up, I already went over my 24 minutes, but hey, so where I wanted to go, guess what? This pandemic is not over. I got a meeting at 9 o'clock today. Probably going to find out, what the chances of having high school football are. And I don't know. That's not my call, but so I'm going to be listening there. But guess what? You still got the whole summer out there, moms and dads, sisters and brothers, kids, to decide whether you want to become obsessive about your success in the upcoming year when they turn the lights back on for high school football, basketball, lacrosse, whatever your sport is. They're going to turn that light back on. And what are you going to do? You're going to start from scratch? Because I'll tell you what, I know the difference. When I was a kid, I was a dummy, man. I was a dummy. My brother's obsession with high school football and being the best you could be, we trained so hard my freshman year, his senior year, we went in and these double sessions were like a breeze. And I'm like, this is easy. And then as my brother left and I wasn't quite as obsessive, I was more like, I want to play everything than become obsessed with one thing. And my fitness level went down and those double sessions were tough, man. They were tough. By senior year, I'm so busy doing things I shouldn't be doing instead of being obsessed with being a great football player that, I wasn't ready. And I knew how to prepare because I was taught how to prepare from somebody else's obsession. But eventually I got the obsessive bug and turned it into to my strength as a coach. Was not the X's and O's, maybe some motivation, but just my obsessiveness with trying to be the best and working hard, trying to correct those flaws that I had when I was a kid that maybe kept me from being as good as I might have been able to be. But anyway, so get going, man. Hey, parents, don't think your kid's a Division One player if they haven't been obsessed with fitness or developing the skills. Don't you dare think that they're a Division One athlete. Otherwise unless they were born into it. And it's funny. The guys that I mentioned for locally who were superstar type athletes who could have been great at anything relatively. They were obsessed with athletics and competition. I tell you what, they're playing. They'd be playing a pickup game somewhere. They'd be doing something somewhere trying to maintain the advantage competition. But anyway, if your kid isn't obsessive about being successful when this thing's all over, then then give them a break, man. Give them a break. Give them a break by being realistic. Be a realist. Understand that, hey, let them have fun with sports. Not every person in athletics is going to turn that into a Division One opportunity. There's nothing wrong with Division Two, Division Three, junior college. There's nothing wrong with being a participant on the team, being that last guy on the bench. Now, I know that from fact, too, because in high school, I elected not to play basketball when I was a senior because I didn't want to be the last guy off the bench, Oh, I was too cool for that. Well, I've been kicking myself ever since because I told people that story over and over again, say, hey, look, there's nothing wrong with being that. I was a successful high school football player, successful high school baseball player. I said, you don't have to be a superstar in every sport, but hey, that was an indication that I wasn't one of these natural athletes that we talked about who could be successful at anything. I wasn't born to be successful at anything. It would take some sort of obsessiveness on my part to get over the hump. And hey, So here I am telling you what you ought to do instead of using myself as an example. So anyway, hey, it's been fun. It's great to be back in front of the camera. Hey, I'm a grandfather, man. Today's got to be great. I can't wait to get a video for my son in Florida about that little ball of joy there. Alina, we love you, baby girl. Alina, how could you love somebody so much who you never had any physical contact with? I got news for you. It only took one picture. Hey, I love you guys. You're awesome. God bless. See ya. Coach V, I'm out.